Jake, thank you very much. It was a great town hall with the House Speaker Paul Ryan. A lot to discuss on this busy news night. We'll analyze it all. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. Thanks for sticking with us. And we've got a lot of breaking news for you. President Trump speaks to the nation about the war in Afghanistan, vowing America will fight to win, but refusing to reveal numbers of troops or timetables. Our military experts on what America's new strategy is, they'll join us. And in our live town hall that you just saw, the Speaker, House Speaker Paul Ryan, says that the president, in his words, messed up with his shocking comments about neo-Nazi violence in Charlottesville. So let's bring in the panel. Let's discuss now. CNN political commentator Jason Miller is here. He's a former Trump senior communications advisor. Political commentator Anna Navarro here as well. Former Congressman Steve Israel, also a CNN political commentator. Cliff May, founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and senior political analyst Mark Preston. So we've got a lot of very smart, knowledgeable people to join us tonight. Mark, I'm going to start with you. The town hall just wrapped up. You heard it. You are there. The House Speaker was criticized for not calling President Trump out by name for his response to Charlottesville. What did we hear from him tonight?
Well, a couple of things, Don. He certainly tried to clean up the fact that he hasn't been as vocal using President Trump's name when condemning him for their remarks. We also learned that Paul Ryan, the House Speaker, spoke to Donald Trump on Monday morning. Now, if you recall the timeline here, there was a statement that was released by the White House on a Saturday. It wasn't very forceful enough. By Monday, we saw President Trump address the remarks. Paul Ryan told us here tonight on CNN that he had spoke to the president that morning, and then he was very pleased with those remarks. Then comes Tuesday, and then, of course, we know how everything went after that. The wheels went off the bus. Paul Ryan said, as you said, that it was messed up, his response to the Charlottesville comments. He also said that he did not agree to a censure. He was asked a question by one of the audience members, one of his constituents, about a resolution now that's in Congress. Would he agree to censor President Trump? He said no, because this is not a political issue in the sense that it's a partisan issue. It's not Republican, Democrat. He said it's an issue that, as a country, we need to come together on. In regards to tweeting per se, a couple things we heard from the House Speaker tonight. One is, he said, do I wish there was a little less tweeting? Of course I do. He also said that it's also incumbent upon parents, though, to keep an eye on them, whether they're watching a lot of television or whether they're on any of these social media networks. When he was asked about bullying by the president, he said, listen, as parents, we need to keep an eye on our kids. Now, in terms of policy, there was a bit of policy discussed tonight. In regards to tax reform, he said he thinks it'll be easier to get tax reform through than it was to try to pass Obamacare. And then when asked about Obamacare, he really kind of hit the ball back towards the United States Senate, said, look, in the United States House, we passed the bill. Now it's the Senate's turn. Don?
We've got a lot to talk about. Talk about that. We're going to talk about Afghanistan, talk about our town hall, obviously, talk about these poll numbers. But, Jason, I want to just get your reaction to the House Speaker Paul Ryan. He says Trump was talking about Charlottesville was morally ambiguous. What do you think about that?
Well, look, I think that the president, I very much liked his comments tonight. I like the fact that he addressed bigotry and hate right off the top on his speech. As I said earlier last week, I liked his comments on Monday. I thought that Tuesday he got off track. But I think coming back with some of his tweets over the weekend, what he said tonight, especially the line that he used tonight about having the courage to heal our divisions within. That's a very powerful line that he had in his speech this evening. And I think the president really showed what kind of leader he can be, not just with the tone and the approach that he took, but also, as we'll get into a little bit more, the overall approach to foreign policy. And I think we've seen a lot of maturity from his end as a leader, being able to step back and take a broader look at this, taking a look at all of South Asia as a theater and coming up with a strategy.
So you heard what Mark said, less tweeting. He wasn't happy with what he said, which was a question that I asked. But you like better what he says on the teleprompter rather than what he's saying off the cuff, which may be, I think, what Americans think is in his own heart. Because when he reads the teleprompter, you know, people say it doesn't sound like Trump. He doesn't really mean it. He's just reading something someone else wrote him. What do you say to that?
Well, no, I mean, these are fundamentally President Trump's words when he gets up there and what he was saying tonight or what he was saying last Tuesday or what he was saying on Monday. But again, I think that, you know, one of the things with Speaker Ryan, and I think this is where you take a look at what President Trump says in his remarks, a standard President Trump speech versus, say, a town hall from Speaker.
Let me just add to what you just said. I have a hard time believing if you're standing in a crowd to protest something and you see, you know, all these anti-Semitic slogans and the Heil Hitlers and the swastikas, that you're good with that and you're a good person. You're not a good person if you're there. That's just so very clear.
Anna, you have been begging Republicans, your own party, to grow a spine, stand up to the president, especially after Charlottesville. You've excoriated members of your party for looking the other way. Do you think, I mean, Jake seemed a lot stronger than Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan never really said that, you know, in his comments except for tonight, and that didn't mention the president, mention his name. Did he go far enough tonight, you think?
Let me tell you, Don, this is hard for me. And it's hard for me because I've known Paul Ryan. I know and love his wife, Jana. I know Paul Ryan as a very good father, a very good husband, a very good son, a very good family man, and a man who's got very high morals, really. And so it's disappointing to not hear him be more forceful. And I realize that he's trying to strike this balance between the person he is, his own principles, his own convictions, his own behavior, and cutting the president of his party slack, giving him more chances, and trying to strike the balance by criticizing what he said without criticizing the man who said it. And so, you know, I think it's cringeworthy, because had anybody else said it, I'm pretty sure Paul would be much more forceful. He's at some point putting his position as speaker above his own brand, his own principles, and his own core. And for somebody like me, who knows him, who's liked him, who knows what his actual values are, not the ones he's projecting and bending like a pretzel to try to articulate, it's somewhat painful to see that Paul cannot be more forceful, cannot be himself. The Paul I see there is the political Paul. Now, that being said, I give Paul a lot of credit because this is his second CNN town hall, and he has taken very tough questions at both. I remember the first one where he took a very tough emotional question from a dreamer, a Dream Act kid. You know, in this place, again, he took very tough questions. He takes them all. He excels at the policy questions. These, where he has got to reconcile the Paul Ryan I know with Speaker Paul Ryan, willing to fudge a little bit on Donald Trump and not condemn what is condemnable, for me, is a little painful.
Yeah. Well, Cliff, I got to ask you then, with Anna having said that, if this kind of moral clarity was so essential and he needed to follow up and add to what Jake said, why did the speaker feel comfortable waiting 6 full days to address what the president did?
Well, I can't speak for Paul Ryan. I think when he talked about the moral equivocation or the moral ambiguity, I think, which more to the point, he was suggesting something else. Look, I think the president is somebody who should listen to his advisors and should have his words filtered so that his proper meaning gets across. If, for example, he was saying not that there was anybody good in the Nazi or KKK march, there isn't, but that there are some people who don't want to see George Washington's statue pulled down, don't want to see Franklin Roosevelt's statue pulled down, don't want to see Abraham Lincoln's statue pulled down and vandalized, as happened in Chicago over the past few days. Those are not bad people. I think he may not have known all of that or communicated all of that effectively. That's why he should have people working with him so that he gives a speech like he did tonight about Afghanistan, where it's pretty clear what he means to say. I disagree with those who think that what the president was trying to say is that there are some Nazis and some good Klansmen. I don't think he meant that. Just as I don't think he thinks they're a good Al-Qaeda, I don't think he thinks they're a good Taliban. I think he needs to be clearer in his communications. I think he lost an opportunity because, as Paul Ryan said, on Monday he was very clear. On Tuesday, when he was impromptu, I think he left a lot of room for ambiguity. People can interpret it as you have and as Anna has, not quite as I have. And I think it's that is unfortunate because he blew an opportunity.
But Cliff, if you were going to a rally and let's say you were upset with the statue coming down, and you saw people with Nazi symbols and saying anti-Semitic and racist things, would you continue to stay there and support?
No, Don.
Do you think very fine people were among the crowds there?
Look, I think people get confused. I think you or I clearly would walk away from those kinds of people. I would also walk away from Antifa. They hold up signs saying more dead cops. Google that and you'll see that. They are also supremacists. They are also people who support violence and utilize violence. They didn't kill anybody that weekend, but they may at another time. They have attacked people in the past. I would also walk away from an Antifa rally. And I would ask, don't you think that's also correct, to walk away from them as well?
Well, the president did say he thought there were very fine people on both sides, and if
I think what he meant by that, and maybe I'm wrong, is he meant there are people who think that a statue of a Confederate general, of Robert E. Lee, should come down. That's a legitimate position. And there are people who think it's part of our history and perhaps it should stay up. That's a legitimate position. But nobody who is a neo-Nazi, nobody who's a skinhead, nobody who's a Klansman, nobody who's within Antifa, in my vision, is somebody who is a reasonable person or a good person. Those are people who are full of hate. I kind of think that's what he intended to say. I don't think he said it clearly.
It sounds like you're, just for clarity, you're not making the same moral equivalence as for Antifa and the neo-Nazi folks who are out there, the neo-Nazi. One is there fighting the fascism, and whether their tactics are right, you know, we can debate that, but they're not on the same level, are they?
You know, the Soviets, the Soviet communists, for a while thought fascists. That did not make them good people. They killed a lot of people, too. Antifa is full of anarchists and communists, and they are not good people. Now, if you want to say who's worse, yeah, I guess at this point, there's no question the neo-Nazis are worse, but that doesn't make Antifa good guys because they dislike people that you and I dislike. I hope we can agree upon that.
Anna, you want to respond to what he said?
Look, I think, I just, you know, I don't understand how anybody can be in the presence of such hate and not be part of that hate. I don't know how you can be in a march, a protest that to me looked like a KKK march except without the hoods. You know, something, and I've been thinking about this protest in Charlottesville, this KKK march without the hood. And there's something that made me so sad about it and that I think we have not discussed enough on TV. How young most of the participants were. A lot of times when we see old footage of KKK marches, it's kind of, you know, old, bitter people blaming their lack of success in life to other people. But to see this very young generation in Charlottesville, it's heartbreaking. Because it tells you that it's an entirely new generation of hate, of racism, of bigotry. And that to me was so heartbreaking.
Yeah. Can I just say, we agree on that, absolutely agree. But the young people who join Antifa, the people who call themselves anarchists and communists, the people who say we're going to shut down those whose speech we disapprove of, we are going to restrict the rights of those we disapprove of, surely you can say a word to condemn them as well on this show, can you not?
Sure. Listen, I condemn anybody that tries to on any other American's rights.
Okay,
I condemn anybody that tries to divide us, and that includes the President of the United States.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to hear you address Antifa specifically, but if you don't want to,
it sounds like you're making you're making a case better than the President of the United States made the case, and I think that he didn't really say, you know, he addressed the people, the protesters. He wasn't talking about, you know, when he said there were very fine people on both sides, he wasn't talking about the people supposedly who were there for the statues. But go on, Steve.
I do think you're right, Don, and I think that's why we talk about the moral ambiguity and the equivocation, and why he bungled an opportunity to make clear that hatred from the far left, from the far right, he does not support either one. What we need in this country is to support American values, freedom of speech for everybody, regardless of race, creed, or color. That's where he should be, because I think that's what he actually believes.
Steve, go ahead. Steve has been sitting by patiently. Go ahead, Steve.
Look, thank you. And it's hard for a New Yorker to sit by and be patient. Look, what we're hearing tonight is a reflection of the deflection. This is not about Antifa. I condemn them. I disagree with them. This isn't about them, Don. This is about a group of neo-Nazis who marched past a synagogue with torchlights and assault weapons. And every time we hear that if you're going to condemn one, you should condemn the other, That's not what this is about. It is about those groups that marched filled with hate and violence and venom, and that's what we should be focusing on, not these distractions and this continued deflection. What we saw tonight, by the way, was a president who is a uniter when he reads from a teleprompter, but seems to be a divider when he speaks from the heart. I would hope that he will be more consistent with the words that are written for him as we go forward.